Welcome back, JLL Coaching Pod. Back from the Pat Davidson seminar last weekend. What I'm going to talk about is learning from the GOATs, learning from these outstanding people in the industry and how powerful that can be. The Pat Davidson seminar, I mean, this dude's ability to tell stories was on a different level. He spoke from 9 till 6 for 2 days in an interesting, informative, brilliant way that kept your attention, kept you excited about what he was talking about, and introduced loads of fascinating principles and a window into his decision making. And a huge thing I took away for myself was that he always says humans make terrible decisions, particularly in the moment. So you need to do your decision making, your thought process away from a one-on-one strength and conditioning session or in a small group personal training or any kind of time with a client. You need to do that prior to that session. The deep thinking, the work, the decision making needs to be done before the session. And that is just brilliant. Like, he's written out this textbook, Rethinking the Big Patterns, that tries to unify everything exercise related, sports performance related, into a individual model, into a single model, and broken down all the key components of that in such an interesting way. And the thought process is there. So like we would ask him a question, he might even start answering it in a certain way, and then he would stop himself and be like, wait a minute, I just need to go back and put this question into the model. And the reliability of the answer that he got out of the model, out of the deep thinking that he'd done prior, was had a higher likelihood of being a better answer, which is just fantastic. And I think that's missing so much with coaches. People make decisions on the fly based on a feeling or this video that they saw on Instagram or exercise selection. There's not really any deep thought behind it with the outcomes that they're looking for or the physical qualities that you're trying to develop. It's much more random and hula and doodah. So for me, like, I just wanted to talk about this weekend and how it was meeting this legend and how it's impacted me. And that's a huge thing. It makes me want to sit down and do the deep work and figure out my model that will be an ever-evolving thing to help improve the likelihood that I can get better outcomes for individuals and people. And what I loved is he didn't speak with certainty on anything. He spoke in terms of likelihoods, predictabilities. And that is just brilliant. Like, when someone's like, I've got all the answers, I'm a guru, blah, 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 I don't want to hear it, because we can't. These things are too complex, like the human system and performance outcomes. There's too many factors involved to have a absolute level of certainty. So even the words he uses in the model align with this philosophy of we're just looking for high level of predictability with outcomes, where rather than acting in absolute certainty. And for me, that is just like gold dust. It gives me the ick when someone's like, nope, that's the best, this is the best exercise, whatever. Because John Kiley, another great exercise scientist, talks about this a lot. They did a study on these experts, and I think from a variety of fields, PhDs, years of experience, versus the layperson. And these experts with their predictions years off into the future, the accuracy level was absolutely terrible. Even though they've been studying it for years and they've got years of experience in doing the damn thing as well, these things are too complex to predict with any high level of degree of accuracy. So it's so much better to just live your life that way. There's too many unknowns to have a level of certainty with what we're doing that will actually get brilliant outcomes. So taking a step back and being like, okay, well, all I'm trying to do is predict the highest level of likelihood that we'll get the desired outcomes, rather than assuming we will 100% get them, because we don't know about the future, because it's too complicated, which is brilliant. And his method, his thought process, it all comes down. So he's got his model. That's at the top of the pyramid, whatever you want to call it, top of the thing. That's what we're talking about. He's trying to create a unified theory of exercise. And then he's got constraints is the second level. Constraints, it's not just like a tool or an exercise, it's everything. Constraints is synonymous for everything, in my opinion. And he broke the constraints down into individual, task, and environmental constraints. These are the different constraints. And what we spoke about a lot was the environmental constraints. So rather than we touched on the individual and we touched on the task a little bit, but it was much more the environmental, which is kind of everything else. A few amazing concepts are from this seminar was also ground. Now, stability is like something that's so vague and hard to really define. What is stability? Stability of a joint, stability of an exercise. What is it? And of course, you've got these architects or these structural engineers who could give you a formulaic answer of what stability actually is. But he thinks it's not the best or most accurate use of words. It's not that useful with regards to getting good outcomes for training. So he uses ground as a really kind of fundamental principle. And ground, the way he describes what ground is, it's the likelihood of something's going to fall over. I challenged him a little bit. I was like, why have you chosen to use these words rather than something like the amount of force required to move this object? Or, the amount of force required for inertia. And he said, because, and it made more sense the more we went on into the weekend, it's harder to measure. Whereas like the predictability of something, the likelihood that something's going to fall over, it's easier to measure. And using the word predictability rather than force, you can take in more things into consideration. And you're not, again, acting with a certain level of overconfidence or certainty when you can't measure all the factors, which again is brilliant. So using this concept of ground, he broke it down for all the different sports. How much ground does an ice skater have during their sport? How much ground does a powerlifter have in their sport? So these are kind of the two extremes, and then you've got everything in the middle. I always think of these like sports which require a higher level of strength. Rugby, American football in some positions, powerlifting, strongman, all up at this far end where you need a lot of ground and a lot of force production. And you need to be hard to fall over. You need to have a low likelihood of being fallen over. For example, for front linemen in rugby, in American football, these big fellas, they need to be immovable. They need to be strong. In sports, the other end of the spectrum with lower ground, you're talking about ice skating. You've literally got like the smallest amount of ground possible on a ice skating shoe. And along this spectrum, and this is just where it gets brilliant, like along this spectrum, you want a different amount of physical qualities. So with low ground sports, you probably want to be better at turning, tumbling, rotating, moving. Whereas at this other higher ground area of sports like rugby, American football, you don't want to be moved. You want to be immovable. You don't want to rotate easily. With powerlifting, you don't want to rotate. You want to move up and down in a straight line without falling over. And applying this. So like we're looking for different qualities here. One side, we're looking for force production. The other side, we're looking for rate of force development. We're looking for ability to rotate, more elastic qualities. You could also think about it is more kind of tendon dominant sports in the low ground area, muscle dominant sports in the high ground area. Now that's that's a bit oversimplistic, I would say, because you need both qualities. You need a lot of physical qualities for both sports, and we're just talking about force production as opposed to energy systems. But those also have considerations in other parts of the model. So it's a nice way to categorize different sports and categorize and simplify which physical qualities those sports generally require. So maybe you need in season for these rugby players, keep them strong, keep them immovable in some positions, and ice skaters, you want to keep them flexible, keep them mobile, but then you might switch it to give them what they don't have in off season. Give them a bit more of that rotation back for these high ground individuals, just so they don't feel like shit, and so on and so forth. So that was a huge part of the model that we went through. And he broke it down in terms of each individual exercise. So each movement pattern. See, I think he had 13 movement patterns, and we went through 7 of them. The typical gym ones, knee dominant or squat, hip dominant or deadlift, horizontal and vertical push and pull. And I think that's what we did. Am I missing one? Might be missing one. Don't think I am. So we went through those 6. And there's a bunch of others in his system. Locomotion, triple extension, throwing, core breathing, thorax biased, core breathing, pelvic biased. I think that's about 11. I'm missing a couple, but no concerns. And we went over some of these and we talked about the principles behind them. He told brilliant stories to learn about it. And it's an absolute, like, it gets me going to see the other coaches there. They're so curious and they put in so much effort and energy into their development. And it's the kind of people you want to be around because they're obsessed with this learning game as well. And they're obsessed with getting better outcomes. And they're dealing with the same problems you are, so it's easy to relate. But they're also pretty much, most of them are savages. Everyone wants to train hard, particularly the Romanians. They are built different. And it's just a nice environment. So for me, it was my first ever seminar. I like to learn through reading and podcasts historically. I've done a mentorship and other bits like that, but this was the first in-person seminar. And just the little tidbits, the small things that you get from being in person were dramatic. This week, and alongside with this weekend, I've had the most light bulbs. It's accelerated the learning massively. And that's kind of what you'd hope for when you're investing a good bit of money into yourself and into developing your knowledge. But I had some ridiculous feedback this week. So one guy, he went dancing on the weekend and he couldn't really sleep because he had a bit of pain. And we did some bits and he felt better, which is just saw him the next day and he was like, yeah, slept well, felt better, moved better. And can you ask for more? I don't think so. That's brilliant. Another guy training for an Ironman got a bit of issue in his QL. We helped just more tools to solve problems with this guy. So if you'd think traditionally, you've got an issue with your QL, this muscle on the side next to your spine, it's a bit pull. It's a bit, there's pain there. He spoke to his chiro. Yeah, you've got a strain here. What's going on? And really, he was just missing a few movement options. He was missing his flexion, his external rotation on that right side. And we helping him regain those movement options with stuff I've learned before, but stuff that got ingrained better from this weekend. Helping regain the movement options through some nice breathing squat drills. And then he was able to put force through other tissues apart from his QL because he regained those movement options and he could spread the load more evenly throughout his body. Huge wins across the board. It was a big week actually from clients because another one told me that the personal training sessions were an anchor for the rest of her life. with regards to getting to bed on time, eating better, these kinds of things, which is just huge things. So buzzing this week over the job, buzzing this week over the seminar. It's been very, very good. And with regards to light bulb moments, the compression expansion model, I know Bill Hartman doesn't call that, but the compression expansion principle that Bill Hartman has popularized, getting that ingrained with a bit more coherence and clarity has been phenomenal. So understanding the movement options, like clinically, with what's associated with compression, which would be your internal rotation, adduction, extension, dorsiflexion, pronation. There's others. Nutation of the sacrum relative to the pelvis. And then for your expansion, you've got your external rotation, abduction, abduction, flexion, plantar flexion, all of these things associated with counternutation of the sacrum relative to the pelvis, all of these things associated with expansion, and seeing how those relationships kind of alternate as you go through propulsion or walking or throwing or a variety of different exercises. And the way Pat explains it is just simplifies it. So Gary Ward in his courses, he uses a lot of arrows, and I'm not going to lie, it's much more complicated. And I think a lot with this Bill Hartman's model, I'm getting the idea of, and I've still got ages to go with it, I'm getting the idea of it's complicated and different with the idea of simplifying. Whereas some of these other models, like Gary Ward's, is a little bit, it's complicated, but there's no simplifying. You just have to understand the complexities, and that's how it's described always. But Bill Hartman's model is there are only two movements. You're either compressing or you're expanding. You're either internally rotating or externally rotating. It's like, how much simpler could it get? There's only two things. So that's brilliant. But then you need to understand the traditional terminology to relate with others and to get those outcomes and to get that communication to actually make progress. So yeah, it was absolutely fantastic weekend, and it made me grateful for my job, being in London. Good opportunities here compared to other countries. So I couldn't be happier about that weekend. It's been non-stop since I've got back. Straight into the mix with work. A few busy days. Busy day today. Clients and podcasting and trying to get a bit of sport in as well. Sorry for interrupting the pod. I'm just here to advertise the programs. A couple programs in the link in the bio, in the link tree. Hypertrophy program if you want to get jacked out of your nut. And the fundamentals program if you're a bit bored of your training, you want to mix it up, you're fed up of just lifting weights in the gym and you want to become a little bit more athletic. Dive into the link tree and get involved now. Well, but yeah, morale is high, as you can probably tell. Just a quick episode. I just wanted to get one out to talk about the weekend. Any questions? The podcast's picking up a little bit. A couple of people are watching. If you're watching till the end, please give me some feedback. Let me know what you think. Drop me a couple questions. If you're interested in online coaching, drop me a DM. We'll help you get those good physical qualities, good results. We'll have a fun time doing it. Just let me know. Have a great day. Thanks for listening.